Today's subject is creating a strong, trusting relationship with your athlete. But before I dive in, I want to look at this genesis of coaches where we could either go to a fear-based side, which was very prevalent in the last century, to a more control-based with respect for your athlete, to a collaboration-based. And the reason I point those things out is because athletes have changed. Social media has changed the landscape. Their attention span has changed. Their interests have changed. So today is about looking at all those areas that can make a difference with regard to developing that strong, trusting relationship with your athlete. Before I get into some of these things that I want to share with you today, I want to talk about performance anxiety because it's important. Athletes feel it, they sense it, they're aware of it. So you as a coach have to really reinforce the fact that it doesn't matter what they do on the playing field or in the competition environment. It's just like my second pillar of coaching. It's about what you're doing, not who you are. So they could perform brilliantly or they can perform, horribly or score an own goal, or it's just, worsen their time or performance type thing. And they should still be able to walk off the playing field and be able to have a conversation about what happened, what they can do better, and feel comfortable that you still care and love them as a human being, as opposed to changing the opinion of them because of what they did out on the playing field. As I take a look at these areas that I think really impact that coach-athlete relationship, some of them I've talked about in other podcasts, but I'm going to touch on each of them individually. The first one on the list would be knowing your athlete, the holistic side of the athlete. Taking the time to ask them questions, simple questions like, what did you learn at school today? Listen to their answer and maybe question them on it. Do you have any hobbies? It's just, you can come up with a lot of areas where you can interact with your athletes. And when you begin to interact with them, they begin to feel like you care. And when they feel like you care, then that trust goes up. Intrinsic reward. It's my number one pillar. It's the number one thing I teach every athlete. Learn how to do this. We all know that we are our own worst enemy. We all know that we are more negative than we ever are positive about who we are and what we're doing. So not only do you have to teach them how to do this or use intrinsic reward, but you have to create an environment where they can have opportunities to get wins when they train. Creating opportunities where you can smile at what they're doing and recognize their improvements and advancements makes all the difference in the world in how they feel about you as their coach. Teach your kids how to explore. That's not a tough one. Kids are naturally inquisitive. So when you put them into environments where you say, can you figure this out? Can you find something new? They're all in. And the key is, as a coach, is you give them the opportunity to do that. And then when they're involved in the activity, take the time to stop and say, well, what have you found? And always listen to what they have to say before you add anything that you might say. And then be very prepared to maybe change directions in the exploration, because kids might find things that you've never thought of before. And more than that, when they do find something that is a real aha moment that makes a difference and changes what you're doing inside your program, take the time to really recognize and reward the kid for doing that. Because when you do that, every kid wants to get that aha moment. Every kid wants to be recognized in that way. Teach them how to take ownership over who they are and their organic potential. Be willing to teach them everything you know. Make sure that when you interact with them, you ask them open-ended questions, listen to their opinions before maybe you give opinions. Teach them how to use critical thinking and cognitive flexibility, and always be willing to say, what's your opinion? Raise your hand if you have an opinion of this. And make sure you reward those people that have the courage to have an opinion. All these things lead to athletes taking more responsibility for who they are, what they're about. They come to training to help themselves get better at performance. If performances go good or bad, you interact with them with regard to what they're going to do in training. But the bottom line here is that you can either dominate and control the environment and do everything for them and train them and push them and then put them out there in the playing field or the competition arena. And if they perform brilliantly, great. But if they don't perform, then all of a sudden you're looking at them and then maybe they feel like you think they failed you. Or they're looking at you and say, well, you failed us because we didn't perform because of what you did with us type of thing. Those situations don't work. Give them ownership. Put them into an environment where they embrace it, because when you do that, the strength of the relationship that you have with them just grows exponentially. Connect their sport to life every chance you get. There are a myriad of opportunities on the playing field, in the training environment, the competition environment, where they can learn life skills in the sporting environment. In my opinion, I think the number one thing that you're doing it with young athletes is helping them grow as young people, because you're teaching them how to do simple things like this. And that simple act, and understanding that simple act, can translate to them doing that in many other areas in their life. So when they learn life skills, where they learn how to knuckle down with perseverance, that failure isn't actually a stepping stone towards success, that they can take things that they learn in the playing field, the strengths that they build in the playing field, they can attribute those things to life and life skills. And when you do that, when you create that environment as a coach, I think you become very effective as a coach, and your relationship with them and that trusting relationship that they have with you grows again exponentially. Teach them everything they need to know about their sport, and constantly update things when you learn new information. Be constantly evaluating them with regard to what they know, because it's one thing to teach them, it's another to know how much has been taken on board type of thing. And the important thing is for them to take ownership. They have to take all of it and understand it, and get to the point where, as I'll talk later, they become innovative about the sport. But don't be shy about it. Don't not teach them because you're uncomfortable being a teacher, because you want to avoid getting something wrong type of thing. I think when we make mistakes, and I've made quite a few in the past, I've had to come into my squad and say, hey, listen, I've been teaching you something this way, but I spent some time with some coaches at a seminar, and they convinced me it should be done another way. And I agree with them. When you do stuff like that, you show them that you have their best interests at heart, that you want the best for them. And so when you do this sort of mea culpa act, and you show them how to take responsibility for not doing something the right way, then you teach them a life skill at the same time. And in my opinion, you increase the trust that they have with you as their coach. Trust them as teachers. When you've taught them everything you know, and you allow them to explore, and you're willing to ask their opinions, and as you evolve as a coach-athlete relationship, you're constantly gauging their knowledge and how much they've taken on board. They're going to get to a point where you feel very comfortable with what they say and what they think, and how they interact with you as far as to the skill and the technical side of their sport. And at that point, you're willing to say, hey, listen, I want you to teach that to a person one-on-one, or I want you to teach it to this group, especially maybe a younger group. And if you've been in this environment, that when you teach, you actually learn more. So you're really helping them as a young person to understand their sport even more, because you make them teachers. And even more than that, you show them that you trust them as teachers. And when you trust them as teachers, they begin to trust you even more as their coach. Encourage innovation. I've talked a lot about putting them into exploration environments, listening to them, teaching them everything you know, convincing them to take ownership over who they are, take full control over reaching their organic potential, all those things. But what really works is that when they mature and they begin to fully understand what it is they're trying to do, and they live it and feel it and see it in a way that you as a coach can never really see it, they begin to teach you more than you'll ever learn from any other source as far as materials are concerned. So I'm going to use these two anecdotes to illustrate that point. The first one is an athlete who came to me as a freshman, and we had to reconstruct that freestyle, and it took 18 months to really get to the point where we went through the bit of a drought before she was able to swim lifetime best times, and then really knocked it out the park in a long course meet. And it was really exciting and great for her to go through that journey. But to illustrate why this was so important, she was an intern for Swimming World her junior year. And during that internship, she actually wrote an article on head position in freestyle, and did a fantastic job illustrating, cataloging, documenting a lot of the things that she went through to get to the point that she could do lifetime best times again. So a month later, I go to the Nationals, and coaches are coming up to me and saying, hey, coach, it was a great article I read, and it really helped me, made a lot of sense to me. And I said, wait a second. I didn't write that article. Tammy Tommy wrote that article. She's a swimmer that really had to work hard to understand freestyle. And it illustrates how important I think it is for athletes to fully understand what it is they're doing, to the point where she was able to write a really, really strong article about freestyle. The other anecdote is about a kid who went to a swim meet and started playing around with a Finney alignment kickboard, which is a yellow triangle-like disc. And he wasn't using it as a kickboard, but he was just playing around with it with regard to freestyle. Came back to campus and said, "Hey, coach, I think I found something that could be really useful." I looked at it, listened to what he had to say, ordered 10 of them on the spot. And when they arrived on campus, Robert Howard took the time to show me what he was playing around, how he was playing around with it. And it just was like, boom, fantastic. It just blew me away that he'd been able to see out of that something that really became a cornerstone in teaching freestyle. I mean, it is the absolute number one tool in my toolbox with regard to teaching kids swimming freestyle. And this was discovered by a swimmer just playing around, being innovative and thinking and using cognitive flexibility to find something that was supposed to be used for something else, and co-opted into using it for what really worked really well for us. So again, I reinforce the point that athletes can really teach you more about the sport if you give them the opportunity to do that. Encourage collaboration. I mean, this might start at a very small, minimal level, even at the late high school, college level, where you would sit down with an athlete during their, say, their yearly or their seasonally review or goal-setting type meeting, and ask them to present their goals, and at the same time say, what would you like to do different? What could we do different? When you get to the elite level, when you're dealing with pro-level athletes that are mature, physically, fully, mentally mature athletes, you might even encourage them to work on seasonal plans and designs and concepts of training, and let them sit down and hash it out with you with regard to how you're going to proceed forward. Because at the end of the day, take ownership. I mean, you look at, there's some athletes at the elite level that don't even have coaches. They do everything on their own. So at that level, you really want a high level of collaboration, because you really want them fully involved and integrated and believing in what it is they're doing. And I think it only enhances the trust that you have with them when you do that. To sum this up, I've given you 9 areas that you can look at to consider with regard to how you create this strong, trusting relationship with your athletes. And I know we're wired differently. We go about a business a little differently. But the bottom line is, I think I've given you some very strong areas that you need to look at. And as coaches, you're already incorporating some of them, maybe all of them. But the bottom line is, I hope you've given you a lot of food for thought in terms of how to kind of enhance what you're already doing within your environment.